Let's call the meeting to Planning Commission to order, and I'm going to take a roll call there, Melissa, please.
John Woodward.
Here.
Scott Miller will be late. Michael Burke.
Here.
Ron Stanko.
Here.
Rick Weinhofer.
Here.
Robert Keith. Eric Ostenchuk.
Here. That's great. Is there any public comment?
Yeah, again, I'd like to object about how summary the agenda is, and if you would like an example like you wanted last time, we have a waiver request. What waiver, what about, I mean, some plain English descriptions and what is the subject to be discussed about would help with transparency with the public. Just like we had in, same thing in infrastructure committee, Main Street, Elm Street, who knows what that meant. Here, what's the waiver about, etc. I hope you understand my comment. That's it. Thank you so much.
Well, we've talked about it before.
You did, but you didn't solve the problem. What's the waiver about? Who knows?
We talked
Only you
about
know.
that.
You probably know, but we don't.
You've been at the meetings, why don't you know?
The waiver?
Yeah.
Sincerely, I don't think I've been at the last planning commission, but it doesn't matter. The problem is that some people should not be at the meeting. You don't ask me, why don't I know? You should just communicate, so if somebody wants to come and make a public comment or is interested in any way, at any time, whether they've been at the meeting or not, you guys know, we don't. Or somebody else, not me. I'm not talking about myself. I think it's pretty simple to understand the reason. I mean, we can go on this discussion forever and you're going to try and find fault, but every agenda has, some plain English description of what is to be talked about. Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on. Michelle, you want to take State Hill Road or?
Sure. The first item on the agenda for 19 State Hill Road, you may recall we talked about at last month's meeting. There's been no further indication from the applicant or his surveyor as to moving forward with the required variance due to the applicant also not yet granting the borough a time extension. Under the municipality's planning code, we have 90 days from the first planning commission meeting where you review a plan to either approve it or deny it. I've asked the applicant for a 90-day time extension as the next planning commission meeting is outside of that 90-day period. I have not received anything. So at this point, the planning commission would need to deny the plan unless, well, just to make a recommendation for council to deny the plan unless a time extension is received by next Tuesday.
Make a motion to deny the plan.
Is there a second? Second. Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the Wyomissing Hills Elementary School project. I believe Andy from Barry I set is here. Give me 1 second, I will pull up McCarthy's review letter as well.
Sure, no problem.
You can get started over.
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Andy Levine. I'm with Barry Isett and Associates. I'm here representing the Wyomissing Area School District and their expansion for the Wyomissing Hills Elementary School. Oh, excuse me. The proposed expansion includes 6 classrooms and an expansion onto the cafeteria or the multipurpose room to better serve the students in the community of Wyomissing. Along with the expansion of the school, we also are segregating parent drop-off and bus drop-off so that there's less conflict between when kids are being dropped off by the parents and they don't sharing the same drive aisle as the school bus. So for safety reasons. Along with that, the stormwater stormwater management is being modified to provide up to the current standards. You can see on the plan here. We also are providing the same number of parking spaces. So this is going to be the bus drop-off. The entrances to the school, we have one entrance here, we have an entrance here, and then we have entrances down here. So buses are gonna come in, go around the loop, and then they're gonna stack and drop off students along here. Parents are gonna come in the second entrance, come around this way, and they're gonna drop kids off along here. This area is only for the dumpsters, in a dumpster enclosure back here, loading. So this is not an actual access drive that's going to be in use while students are going to be dropped off or picked up.
So all traffic is coming off of Wyomissing Hills Boulevard?
All traffic is coming off of here, yes, as is it is currently. Yeah, Woodland Drive.
Oh, Woodland, right.
Yeah, Woodland, right, from here. So we're not modifying any of the existing entrances. There are currently 2 entrances. What we're doing is we're segregating bus and car drop-off. We have 2 classrooms and an expansion here. We have 4 classrooms and an expansion here. We have some additional office space, music room. This is an expansion for the cafeteria and the kitchen.
So any issues with ingress or egress to Woodland by both groups traveling at the same time, one wanting to go left, the other going right?
There's enough site separation between the 2 driveways that it shouldn't be an issue. And you also have the buses coming in and stacking generally at the same time. I mean, it's gonna be a lot cleaner than it was previously. But I don't think anything short of having 2 separate streets would alleviate them.
Was that issue reviewed by fire and police, ingress and egress,
Yes.
emergency vehicles?
Yes, we had a fire marshal as well as code review twice. We got a preliminary design development and a final for construction documents.
Will there be any modifications? You said there are no modifications to the access points to Woodland Road, but from walking down there daily, I know that there are, I think there are some ADA upgrades at the access drive. I don't know if they meet current standards, and I also know that there are some ponding issues down at called the northern or western Woodland Road access point that occurs, and that's where the crossing is, the crossing guards.
At this driveway?
Yes, that one
Okay.
there. Right on the,
We are updating ADA access on the right side, on this side of the driveway.
And if I could also add, I know the district was a separate project, is adding a crosswalk speed sign as part of the renovations and additions. Once again, not part of our scope, but it was designed and permitted concurrently parallel with this project, which will be installed to the left of the bus entrance as well.
so it's, with the ADA, I'm sorry. With the ADA, is that what's shown in the pedal? What you're showing there, is that a new pedestrian way? Or no?
It's an existing pedestrian road.
That goes around the loop?
Oh, this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so the crossing will now be moved to this, I guess, planned east side of that driveway?
There's also an existing pedestrian access on this side, so it's gonna be on both sides of the driveway.
I just know that on the planned west side is where the ponding occurs. Within the road, right at the corner. And I know that's where all the crossing occurs currently. So we have kids jumping in ankle deep water when it rains.
Used to be fun when I was.
So I have a question. If the vehicle traffic is in the right-hand side or east and the bus is on the west, how does how does ADA get involved in the buses? And how does ADA, other than vehicles that are handicapped accessible, other than buses, how does the ADA affect anything here or everything? And how is it resolved? Does that
Well-
make any sense?
I believe it does. Buses, if we have ADA buses for drop-off, we have depressed curb all along here for handicap drop-off.
Okay, is there any other ADA
There
application
are-
to a bus entrance and exit?
That's true.
I mean, there's no independent pedestrian ADA accessibility requirements, are there?
Sure, the sidewalks across the driveway, with them accessible ramps on those.
You have to have an accessible path from, we have ADA parking
I
here.
understand over there, I was trying to.
We also have
buses.
ADA parking here. And we have an accessible pathway. They can come down here, cross over, and come up to this entrance. There's also accessible entrance here into the building. And from the buses, from here into the building here, or along the walkway to the entrance here.
Sounds like fun.
So Andy, is the westernmost ramp gonna be upgraded to meet standards, or just the eastern?
The eastern is definitely updated. The western,
I think that was your question, wasn't
Yeah, that's my I mean, considering, you know, a lot of the students that are walking here are coming from up Grandview and the hills, or coming through the park,
Mhm.
if they live by the pool, and they're coming in from the western.
They're coming in this way,
Right,
and then this way.
right. Or, and then maybe on the other side of Woodland, and that's the.
And then they're crossing over before the driveway.
Right, and even those that don't walk from up on Grandview, so, let's say, when parents do drop-offs along Woodland
Mm-hmm.
on the lower part of the screen.
Or if
they
cars
all cross.
stop here and drop the kids off.
They don't stop, they typically stop on the eastbound side of Woodland
Okay.
as it goes up from the driveway up the hill.
The pedestrian, there's a separate, there's a road permit was issued to the school district to update their crossing of Woodland Road at this location.
That's what it is,
So-
ordinance.
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but Chris and I were wondering, so this is all programmatic driven, not enrollment driven.
It is primarily bringing the school up to 21st century teaching methodologies.
Right.
And then, as you know, the enrollment at schools fluctuates with just constantly. But yeah, this is,
I know Michelle was at the town gown meeting last Wednesday, and I was out of town for that, but it made mention of a slight decline in the student population, but room for an increase in the population. And I know it fluctuates, I'm an old school board guy myself, but do they see any enrollment increases coming down the pike?
Yes, yeah, we did the feasibility study a few years ago. They did have a moderate increase over the next 10 years. The building itself also had inadequate support spaces, such as music, art, special education. There were no 21st century flexible spaces included as well. I can tell you that kindergarten was flowing into the first and second grade wing. There was no special ed in that lower first and second grade wing. Those students had to travel all the way to the top right-hand side for special ed curriculum. They'd like to include pre-K curriculum. Two of those additions, the northwest wing, include 2 pre-Ks. The other 2 are kindergarten classrooms to give that entire wing now to keep those kids from intermixing with the first and second grade wing. So yes, it gives the building better efficiency, better utilization. Also incorporates, once again, an additional music classroom, music support spaces that does not exist. They have music on a cart, one hopefully inadequate sized music room, and storage to the north. So it gives the building better proximity, logistics, centralizes those core facilities so students, once again, don't have to travel the entire length of the building to take music, to take art.
So pre-K, is that optional, or everybody in the district gets pre-K?
I'm from the architect's office, so I apologize. I don't have that specific information, other than the fact that it was requested that it was being investigated as potential curriculum for this school, for this elementary population, to bring that in. And then the final one is the cafeteria. I believe they have 5 servings right now. It is entirely too small. The kitchen is woefully inadequate, so that addition is
That
desperate.
was when my kids were there 20 years
Yes,
ago.
yes.
So, okay, any questions? So what kind of action do we need to take here?
Well, one thing would be, is it sounds like we want that western handicap ramp upgraded and that driveway low spot taken out. Is that something you guys want to do, Andy?
Yeah, yeah, I think we can manage that. I just wanna be sure, I'm gonna come up here and on the screen, just so we can be, we're looking at the ADA ramp on this side,
Yeah.
and it only goes to the driveway, and you're saying that there's ponding
Yeah,
occurring.
there's no ADA ramp that crosses Woodland at that location.
Yeah, no, there is not.
So the addition of that and then.
You wanna add an ADA ramp on Woodland,
Right.
onto Woodland, and then crossing.
Right, and there's a low spot there.
There, you want that, actually 2 ramps, one across the driveway, one across Woodland.
Yeah, I mean,
or something?
unless they
We
plan.
already
to
have the
move-
one across the driveway.
Unless they plan to move the crossing of Woodland to the
Okay.
south side or the east side.
But does the one on that side meet ADA?
This one,
Yeah.
the existing one. Yeah, it's a flush, as far as I remember, when I was
Truncated
out there.
domes and all?
It was just a flush concrete right into the sidewalk, or right into the driveway. But I'll run over there and double check.
But are the ADA requirements not already outlined for us? We don't have to like guess and figure out where we want to put them. Isn't there some specific requirements for ADAs within?
When this
school
sidewalk was
boundaries?
put in originally,
To answer that question, no, there's no special requirements for schools. ADAs in general.
So
As
we don't
long
have-
as on the
so
street.
we don't have to do
The
anything.
street requirements are the street requirements. When you
Yes.
get into buildings themselves, there's separate requirements.
and you have to provide an access from the sidewalk
Right.
to the school in ADA compliant pathway.
So there is a requirement.
Or if it doesn't tell you
There
where it
is no
has to go.
existing crosswalk here,
There's a crosswalk, there's no ramp.
there's no ramp to the crosswalk.
Or on the other side. In fact, it would probably be beneficial if you looked at a location on
This
the improved side of the sidewalk.
And-
Because I
and
believe
come
the other
across that.
side connects at a driveway. It may just, as long as there is an ADA compliant crossing at that driveway, I don't care which side.
Which
it's on.
side it's on?
Right. In fact, it may be beneficial on the side where you have the new wall-based shade.
Can I also just review between now and next week that secondary crosswalk project that the district is undertaking? It may very well have that.
It may address it.
Right, and I don't know if that has come across your plate yet. Or already approval. We'll confirm that either way. If it's included in that project, we'll just make a note of the plans, let you know that.
Great.
And if it's not, then we'll update the plans to include it.
So what action do we have to take?
You could entertain a motion to recommend conditional and final plan approval subject to all items in McCarthy's review letter dated May 27th, 2021.
What about the waiver requests?
I can go through the waiver request quickly.
We should address those before we talk about conditional approval.
I thought we acted on some of those, to be honest with you, in the May meeting, or the June meeting, I'm sorry.
Well, I'd like to make one more point with regard to ADAs. If there's no requirements for ADA on this property, that I think it might be at least advisable to get somebody else, I mean, maybe the school district wants to say something about ADA.
There are ADA requirements,
Yeah.
and
You
they're
said
being
there
met.
weren't any. You
No, I
said-
didn't.
No,
I did not say there weren't any.
they're
No,
not
you're
specific requirements for schools.
I said there's nothing that
ADA
says
is-
exactly where you have to put it. but there are requirements.
So what are the requirements? I guess I'd like to know what the requirements are.
You have to have accessible paths from any handicap accessible parking lot to the front of the entrance of the building, or any pedestrian path to the front of the building. And a sidewalk along a public street is a pedestrian path.
So, are you adding anything? Is it talk about construction of anything, or just a path? Path is a path. You have to put ramps in.
It has to meet all the ADA requirements, width, slopes, landing requirements, maximum rise.
Okay, so if there's a requirement to have access, and then the access gets enhanced by having all kinds of ramps and handrails, those sorts of things, if that's sort of up to us,
That's
then
not, that's in the code.
Right.
handrails.
The code stipulates at what rise and what slope you need handrails.
Okay, so we're back to square one. I didn't design anything up there, but maybe I think there should be a handrail and a ramp at the other entrance when cars are coming in. Is that something that's?
We only need a handrail what's defined as a ramp under ADA code.
But if you put the ramp in, then you have a ramp.
There's different classifications of ramps.
Okay,
There's a ramp that you would see at a building that's concrete switchback that has railings on both sides.
got it.
Then there's a handicap curb cut ramp that you see at every intersection.
Okay.
And then there's ramps on a path that have less than 5% slope, which they don't need railings.
Okay. I don't think it's fair for you to make me seem like I don't know what I'm talking
Well, I
about.
don't think it's fair that you just threw me under the bus that I said they weren't required, which isn't what I
I
just
don't
said.
even understand the subject, and you want to educate me, I'm perfectly willing to listen. I'm wondering why there's one ramp and one pitched area on the side where the buses are, and I'm scratching my head and I'm saying, why wouldn't there be one where the cars are? And on the other side of Woodland, instead of just one up here, why wouldn't there be another one down here? Because I'm thinking ADA, well, the more convenient would mean maybe more locations. And maybe that's a dumb question, but I get to ask dumb questions, because you're the engineer and you're supposed to tell me how I'm wrong.
I think I just did that.
I don't think you did.
Okay, we go read the ADA. It's about that thick. I don't know what you want me to tell you.
I just want to know why.
He just agreed to put the ramps in that Eric
I'm just
requested.
asking a question. I'm saying if we're here at the planning commission talking about thinking there's a sinkhole here or a pond there and a ramp there, and that's a good place for it, I just said, why not one up there? I mean, you could tell me why not one up there, and I'll just go home. But
Where
that's
do you
okay.
want one?
I'm just
Point to
saying.
Andy where you want one.
We have one, all right, we have handicap parking spaces here. The handicap path goes along here to this entrance, they can go to this entrance, they could cross and go to this entrance from these handicap spaces here. We have pedestrian,
I will say before Andy continues, those two to the north are not primary entrances, those are already secondary entrances. Primarily egress only or
these
for
two.
event, right, so if somebody wanted to use the cafeteria in an evening, they also have a after-hours daycare, it's not daycare, pardon me, after-hours play, for students, to use, whether it's community or students. Instead of bringing those children and adults through the main entrance and then trekking them the whole way back to the cafeteria, we're gonna bring them, district's gonna bring them right into that northern entrance that Andy pointed out right there, which is ADA compliant, meets the code requirements. However, the primary entrance to the school during the morning for buses and cars is the one to the left. The reason we don't have the ADA ramping, obviously, on the right-hand side cars, that's for queuing, so the cars aren't stuck out on Woodland trying to get in. So we've given them plenty of queuing opportunity to go around the far right loop, all the way around, and then the student gets out on the passenger side, right where he has the hatch, sort of in the center there, right there. And they currently have a situation that they do right now, they have teacher proctors that are out there, and then they walk the students across that sidewalk, and once again, it's fully ADA accessible then down to the main entrance. So we have provided within the school full ADA accessibility to those main entrances, and primarily the main entrance to the left. What is missing, however, which has just been brought to our attention, is the one at Woodland. And as I mentioned, I will go back to the drawings and I will, I'll verify if that crosswalk project, once again, not in our scope and contract, but I do have the drawings for reference. And I'll verify if there's a curb cut and ADA accessible entrance off of Woodland. And if there's not, Andy will modify the drawings and
And we will
include that as
include
part of
that.
this project. So one way or another, you will get that ADA accessibility for Woodland.
So my only question was, if that's designed for pedestrian traffic, ADA pedestrian traffic,
Mhm.
would that be accurate? So if there's an access there for pedestrian traffic at that particular location, would there be any benefit to having one at the other entrance?
I mean, down here,
Exact, right there.
you have one here,
Yes, I
they're
know,
so
but
close
we're
together, it
talking
wouldn't.
ADA access, not run down the street and go the other way. Would that be helpful to have one at the other end as well?
It would be pretty circuitous to bring those ADA folks all the way around the loop.
From here, then they would come up here.
Yeah,
and they
and I
would,
think it's
you know,
probably
cross
safer to
over,
just
come up,
bring
and-
those kids directly.
You know, it isn't,
So the only access to the school is.
also with the school, and you have, you know, we're talking about the kids walking along Woodland, and then they
Right.
cross the street to
Right.
get in here. So I think with the crossing guard, you kind of want to have that at one location instead of at two locations.
Yeah, I would agree. And, you know, if they're coming from the east or the right side of the plane, there's the always stop at the next intersection there.
Yes.
They're crossing the
Yeah, there's a stop.
Coming down
down
Woodland
here.
sidewalk, you can wheel right across on the
Yeah.
stroller, you don't need anything there.
That's all ADA.
On the eastern driveway is all compliant.
Yeah, that has truncated domes, if I recall, through there, and at the always stop intersection as well.
All right, now I feel like I know what we're talking about.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much.
So this is a 2022 project, right?
This is a 2021.
Completion?
I mean, it's a school, so, you know, we're in the middle of school construction season.
Right.
We
So-
actually issued a partial permit for the interior stuff, they don't need land development approval on, just to work with them on this and the high school project.
Well, I think the planning commission and the school district, we're on the same page, we just wanna make it kosher.
Mhm.
So let's just get there.
So Chris was correct, you did not take action on the waiver request, and there is more than one.
Right, I can go through those waivers if you want, Sean. The first waiver we're requesting is to allow simultaneous preliminary and final plan approval. Because we're not subdividing, we're not doing, we're constructing off of these plans, and it's a single lot that's not being subdivided, we feel that a preliminary and / final plan is appropriate for this instance.
Should we take action on these individually,
Please
or
and
is?
thank you.
Okay. Make a motion to approve the waiver for the preliminary / plan.
Second. Do we need to, wait till you make the modifications to the ramp or not?
No, this isn't going to affect the waiver request.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes, thank you.
All right, the second waiver, we request to allow provided plan scale of 1 inch equals 40 feet instead of 1 inch equals 100 feet. Basically, we're making it larger than what the regulations call
One equals 50.
for. Oh, is it 50?
We do that all the time.
Yep.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, thank you.
The third waiver we're requesting is to allow for a plan size of 30 inch by 42 inch plan sheets as opposed to 24 by 36 or 36 by 48.
Is that related to the scale?
No, not at all. It's just, we'd like to have our plan sheets to be the same size as the architectural plans, so they can all be hung at the same thing, but,
Which, if you're updating the subdivision regulations, that should be one of the items that should be included.
Duly noted.
you get this one a lot?
That's on our, that's on our list with
Yeah,
plans, yeah.
30 by 42 is standard architectural size, so that's, yeah.
I would prefer 22 by 34, but.
Good luck with that. Okay,
I make that motion.
thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, motion passes.
All right, the next waiver that I have is a waiver request for section 305 of the stormwater management ordinance, which requires loading ratios of, I didn't actually write them in my, we're exceeding them. I believe it's 10 to 1. No, it's not a couple percent. It's like 10 to 1, and we're at 30 to 1. And the reason that we're requesting a waiver, our professional geologist who was out there and he did the test pits and he did the borings and he did our infiltration testing, found that the soil out there is fairly granular. It has void space in it, within it. And I asked him if he would recommend that we could exceed the loading ratios. Loading ratios per the DEP B&P manual are really a guidance. Most of the loading ratios are to prevent clogging of the pore space within your infiltration basin with the grit, rubber, things that you find in parking lots and highways and roadways and things like that, which can clog the infiltration. Most of our drainage area that's coming into this infiltration basin is the roof area for the building and the grass area behind it. There's not a lot of actual pavement, actual roadway, driveway that comes into the basin. But, and I've dealt with this a lot over my career, we have added into our stormwater management design, it is an infiltration basin. We have also added a orifice at the bottom of the outlet structure with a valve on it that should it not dewater as planned. And we also have maintenance in the operations and maintenance agreement that's going to be signed by the school district, that the valve, which will be normally closed, will be open to allow that water to drain out of that basin.
That makes sense to you, Jim?
Well, it bypasses the stormwater then. Doesn't function.
Should it not dewater within 72 hours after the storm?
Then you'd have to rip the system out and rebuild it. Right?
We would have to really take a look at
Is there a drawing that shows us where this potential flood would happen?
it isn't really a flood.
Well, I mean.
If you can bring the plan up again, I can explain it to you where the basin, it's a two-station basin, where there are two lobes to the basin. It's here and here. Water flows primarily up from the uphill, off of the building, comes around here, comes into the basin, fills both sides at the same time. Our outlet structure is down here. So this would fill for the infiltration, for the increase in runoff volume. That volume would sit in the basin and then infiltrate. Anything over that volume, and there is over that runoff over that volume, goes through the outlet structure and goes through the storm system. So what we're saying is that should this, and this could be with any infiltration basin, loading ratio be whatever it is, should this not dewater 72 hours, within 72 hours after the completion of the storm event, then there is a valve down here that it can be emptied so that you don't have a wet pond in here, so that you're not promoting, mosquitoes or anything like that.
Are you going for MPDS on this?
Yes.
What was their comment on 30 to 1?
Nope. No problem.
They didn't make a comment on 30 to 1?
Nope. And I have dealt with DEP a lot with issues similar to this. Most of the time, it's the major concern is that you're holding the water greater than 96 hours.
What's your roof material you have?
Pardon?
What's the roof material?
It's a TPU.
So it's gonna have,
Sheet.
is it gonna have aggregate on top of it?
No.
Okay.
So we're looking at fairly clean water coming into the basin,
Yeah, except the lawn areas.
except for the lawn. And then we also have, you know, in our O&M for maintenance of the soils, we have amended soils in the basins and
So do you have your NPDS permit?
no, we do not yet.
Okay, but did you get the technical?
We did get the technical review, it was fairly minor notes and details. There wasn't anything in there that would change our design in any way.
Are there impediments to the operation of business during this 72-hour period? Or
No.
the water is just in a hole?
The water is in this basin, where it would be, if this was designed as a detention basin, you would have water in there.
So I have just one other question, because when you first started speaking about it, I was thinking about all the water that ends up on the back side of the school.
No,
Is that
That
part of
does-
this, or that's just, it'll always be there?
the water on the back
It'll be
side.
the left field line of the baseball, or the playground.
Back here?
Yeah, back there. Is that-
We're not touching those.
You're not.
No,
So that
that's,
just-
whatever that is
And this has
staying that
nothing to do
way.
with that.
This has nothing to do with
How do these basin operations under the proposed scheme compare with what exists out there today?
that. You know, that's a very good question. We did not run the actual loading ratios for the existing basin. The existing basin
Is in there?
is like right in here. It is, I wanna say that it's, roughly the same size, might be a little bit bigger. So if we're 30-1, we're not really adding that much impervious cover, that they're still over the 10-1.
Yeah, that's why I asked, because I never noticed that basin being full.
Being wet,
Yeah,
being,
yeah.
having a pondage. Yeah, and our geologist does not believe that there's going to be an issue.
We'll wait till you get the NPDS permit and then act on this one?
Well, if they've got the technical review, and if it was minor, I don't have an issue with that. Do you have a copy of that?
I'm aware of now.
I don't remember seeing the technical review on that.
I can send that to you.
Well, if you send it to us after the meeting, you won't get action on it.
I know. And as the school district would prefer to have action on it.
Can we move on and come back to it?
Sure.
Yeah, I know. Don't have anything. So people from the conservation district, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing it either.
I'm trying to load it up now and I can send it to you.
Jim, what's the waiver that they're actually requesting from 305, what does that entail? What is their waiver from?
It's a waiver of the loading ratio. I think the ordinance is 7-1, they're asking for 30-1.
Yeah. Manager. June 15th. Might send it to
Can we do something else while we're waiting?
you. My wife went on vacation and used up all my data, so I'm on snail data until the middle of the month.
I have another question about the pond. Is there any fencing on the existing pond out there? Is there any concern about that? Is there?
We are proposing fencing around it.
You are?
Yes, we are. Yeah, we don't, when you have children around something that would be so fun to jump in, yeah, we don't want that to happen.
We have not discussed that, so.
So Jim, are you supportive of the waiver or not?
Not really. Not
It's
pretty
June
high.
15th, it's in John.
That's why I was saying about seeing the district doesn't want to do it.
Will what it says in that report change your mind potentially, or?
Good. To Do we have a report from your geologist?
Should have the geotech report.
Do you remember was it the original submission, the April submission, or the June?
I would go to the original submission. Did you find it?
We're not gonna send it out to you.
That's not it. It would be a separate,
That's not it.
unless it's a part of one of the appendices in that report.
Take it back to-
Yeah, I don't see it as an appendix.
So, this is everything that came in with the first submission.
Well, it would seem to me that when you have a geologist involved in this, and the numbers aren't as way out of whack as they appear to be, I mean, if you said 10 and somebody else said 30, I'd say that's a big difference, but I don't know the difference between 10 and 30 in regard to those ponds, and if we're gonna waive something, I think we ought to know what that means, I mean, road rules.
But to the extent the school district appears to intend this to be a 2021 project, and they've asked if you can consider some action tonight, planning commission could delegate the responsibility for making a final determination on this to the borough engineer. So you could consider a motion, if you're willing to today, to conditionally recommend approval of waiver subject to the borough engineer
They just letters in there.
satisfying himself that the submission of the developer is satisfactory to justify the waiver.
Yes, I'll see.
Is the only downside here is that in 3 days you could have a lot of water and there's a valve you can turn to get rid of it? Is that all?
The valve is only supposed to be used for an emergency failure.
Right, right. But it sounds like if there's that much water coming in, that, I'm not trying to put words in anybody's mouth, it seems like that could be a lot of water also because 30 and 10, two different numbers, 72 hours is the number. Is that relevant? If that's the only thing that's relevant, that you have to turn that valve every now and then, okay, is that a big deal? I don't know, but there's nothing else going on, and it's just 30 versus 10.
The information on the existing is not available. To Eric's point, would that provide some valuable context, or is that just not something that would be available?
Not immediately, but it's something I could easily get. I could calculate that.
Well, Chris's idea, and you're right, Ron, 30 to 10 seems like a huge difference, but,
10 is the required, it isn't necessarily what's being provided currently.
right.
So it could be an increase of 20 to 30, or 22 to 28, or 18 to 28, or.
Right. We would defer to our engineer. Is that okay with you, Jim?
Sure.
Okay.
So
Somebody like to make that motion?
What would you be looking at? I mean, what would you want to see?
I wanna see what the current loading ratio is, I wanna see their geologist who's, they verbally said is certifying that he feels 30 to 1 is, I wanna see some signed statement from him, signed and sealed stating that he feels that based on the underlying soils, the 31 is gonna be adequate for long-term functionability of the two basins.
Okay.
So we think it should, there's a possibility you need more than 30.
Less.
Less.
Right, so we have some parameters for what Jim would look at.
More makes the basin smaller, less makes the basin bigger.
Somebody want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, motion carries.
So that means that the waiver is conditionally granted, subject to Jim's determination that it is justified based on the information that he's gonna review.
And council meets Tuesday.
Is it gonna happen before then?
Yes.
Tomorrow.
Perfect.
Is that all the waivers?
I believe so.
I think that was
Yes.
all right, just the four?
Those are all the waivers.
So then is anyone willing to make a recommendation for conditional final plan approval subject to the further review letter dated May 27th?
I'll do it.
Then I'll speak for
Second?
46.
Second. Thank you. Any further discussion?
Question for Jim, there's nothing in there that you see as troublesome to overcome?
No. This will take care of everything, all the agreements and, you know, stormwater agreement, developers agreement, financial surety, all that stuff is covered in there.
Okay. That's all the further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries.
I'm on the wrong project.
Just for the record, as me being a taxpayer,
Mhm.
did they issue a bond for, I've read so many letters in advance of this meeting, but did they issue a bond for $15 million and they're gonna issue another one? Yeah.
I don't know the exact numbers. I know there was a bond that was issued a few months back,
Right.
late last year, and then the balance of that second bond will cover the balance of that project. I don't have the details, obviously,
I can reread it myself, but thank you.
but that's the
Okay, let's move on. Thanks so much.
Absolutely a request item. The next item on the agenda is the Wyomissing area junior senior high school and a waiver request to not have to go through the formal land development process, which I'm attempting to find said waiver. There we go.
This is just a minor addition to the cafeteria, right?
Correct.
And typically in the past for projects of a small footprint like this, the planning commission and council would be agreeable to grant this type of waiver.
We need anybody in planning commission to talk about it or?
Is there anything we have to talk about other than what's in that letter?
They still have to comply with the subdivision and land development ordinance, as well as stormwater management ordinance, and the Berks County Conservation District requirements, so it's not like they get a free pass to do whatever they want. They're just not going through the formal process of submitting plans that will eventually be approved and recorded.
Are they gonna post financial security as part of it or not?
Typically, we don't
Typically, we
require
have,
that.
typically we have them post the stormwater financial, but not,
Okay.
nothing else.
But nothing else? Okay.
Not when the waiver was given.
Alright, that makes sense, alright.
And in this case, nothing's being done within the public right of way.
Okay.
Would you like to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up on the agenda is the Highlands Barn project. Give me one.
That's all right.
I think actually someone just emailed me.
Probably the rendering. You can hold the plans up for the rendering, whichever is easiest.
Thanks again. Thank you. Take care, sir.
So is that right behind where Paul Rodell lives?
I don't know who Paul Rodell is.
Used to.
Used to live.
Yes.
Yeah. Paul Rodell still lives. Yeah.
Is there, you want me to pull up the proposed?
If you want to pull up the overall, I can give quick context to where we're at.
Okay, do you want the laser pointer?
You should use it. It's easier to stand here. Thank you very much. My name is Bill Fredericks. I'm a civil engineer with RGS Associates. With me is, this afternoon, is Kevin Diacosta and Curtis Evans with the Highlands at Wyomissing. Before you this afternoon is a proposed barn project. Where the proposed project is to repurpose the barn into 4 apartment units. So to give context to the site, Cambridge Ave is here. You can come into the main site. The main building is here at this intersection. You make a left on Gray Circle, a left on Pine Tree Lane, then a left on Gale Song. So the Gale Song cottages are back here. It's an existing barn. It's between Gale Song and Old Wyomissing Road, right here. If you want to pull up the rendering, then it's probably just the top. So the proposed project is to take an existing barn and convert it to 4 apartment units. There's 2 proposed kind of expansions on the barn itself. One would be balconies off the rear for the apartment units, and 2 is to create an accessible entrance into the building. Off Gale Song, we have a proposed ADA space with an ADA connection into this building, so that main entrance provides the accessible entrance going into the building. And then we have some parking in the rear back here. There's actually 2 existing connections, I believe. One here to Wyomissing and one here. Both are currently chained for emergency purposes only. This entrance here would be proposed to be closed off. It actually only goes into this little parking area, so emergency services would use that. This one is proposed to stay, new bollard, new chain. We do have the letter, they ask for a knock box, all that kind of stuff that will be provided for emergency services. And then parking with spaces provided for these units. There are 4 proposed garage spaces within the existing barn. So the existing barn is 3 stories, kind of 3 stories in the back and like 2 stories in the front. There is existing sewer and water along Gale Song Drive that would be proposed to be connected to. It is actually a low pressure force main from the Gale Song cottages that we would propose that connection to. Stormwater is proposed by this basin and the northern section of the site carried to by pipes. I think that's it from the site context. There is actually a large existing tree here that we are attempting to save.
Is there going to be an elevator in there?
So from the architecturals, yes. I'm always hesitant to say yes on a 4 apartment unit, but yes, there is a proposed elevator.
On the front addition, there's no
Yep.
elevator. Goes from the
That's what this
garage floor all the way to the second floor.
Yeah. So with that, we are receiving the McCarthy's letter and the fire department letter. I did had a conversation with Greg, had a conversation with Michelle, talked through the comments. I don't think there's any issues there that we can't resolve. In the conversation with Michelle, one of the comments that came up, or one of the things we'll have to resolve is and this is an existing tree. It is a rather large tree, and I apologize, I don't have a bigger picture of it. But currently on site, there's the existing barn here, and you can see kind of the existing width of pavement, and then the existing tree here. And currently, we try to maintain that existing width. I think it is 20 feet right here at that pinch point. And that's to try to preserve the root zone of that main trunk. I think it's actually a 60-inch caliber tree. It's a pretty big tree. So we are going to seek a variance so that we can go down to 20-foot width. I believe the requirement is 24 in zoning ordinance. So we're going to seek a 20-foot width to preserve that tree. If we don't get the variance, we could always remove the tree. I'd rather not. The tree was a little that much closer to it, maybe right up against it. But we are going to seek a variance of that.
Don't trees need 30 square feet to prosper?
So it exists now with the pavement of the area. So I agree, in an ideal situation, you wouldn't have this.
Actually, it'd be more damaging to remove that paving where it is now.
Yeah, you try and limit the disturbance to the tree zone as much as possible. But yes, ideally you try to go to the canopy of the tree. With that, and kind of coming out of this conversation, we did submit a revised waiver letter on July 1st. Because before, I know I think you do action on each. Is there any questions on the plan that you guys want me to run through at this point before I go through the waivers?
Have there been any other council committees that have reviewed this plan other than us at this point?
There wouldn't be any other counselor, well, committee that would be required to review it. It would be you
Well,
and
that-
then
I guess
council.
that would be the question. So I guess the question is, or at least one question would be, the front of the barn at along Wyomissing Road, is that where the parking would be in the back there?
Yes, so there's 3 spaces here and then 4 spaces here, 2 on this side, 2 on this side. This is an existing connection that would be removed from Old Wyomissing Road, and there are plantings here to kind of buffer that parking. And then as you can kind of see, this proposed rendering has plantings shown right here for these 3 spaces.
You also said there was garage space.
So there's kind of shows in this picture, there's some existing, essentially existing underneath, there would be garage, 4 garage spaces, 1 for each of the units proposed in that rendering.
Well, I would only reference my comments based on having been around when Highlands was a dream instead of a reality, and the spread of the Highlands to the people that were here initially was that whole Wyomissing Road. You couldn't see anything from the Highlands because it was all coming from Cambridge, and now that's coming down the other side of the mountain, so to speak. I know there's some concern about the ingress and egress areas off of Cambridge, where those, hopefully they're emergency vehicles only, ingress and egress at both ends. But more importantly, the potential access, I guess, I would say potential visual access to the cars that are coming around there and parking in the back, is 20 feet off of Cambridge Avenue, off of Old Wyomissing Road. And that on any given day, on a nice day, there's hundreds and hundreds of people biking and walking and everything else there. So to the extent that if you can do to that what you've done to everything else, which is trees everywhere, because we really don't want to see who's parking there. And if they want to join everybody, they can go to the other end and join us walking up and down. Having that interchange of, in this day and age of clean air and all that stuff, having parking areas there is sort of
Ron, you're echoing 150% comments I've had throughout the initial review process, and not just the visibility of the cars, but also, I made the point, anybody that eventually lives in that barn may not like the idea that hundreds of people are walking past their front window on a daily basis, so strongly encouraging vegetative screening and buffers wherever possible. I mean, there's nothing from a zoning standpoint we can do to stop them from putting that area there, but we can request they buffer it as much as possible.
well, I think from my perspective, I'm just a member of the local planning commission. As we move up the hierarchy of
You're
people.
insulting me?
If I'm, you're also a member of the hierarchy too, so we got both fights. But I mean, obviously, if there's other people mentioning this, the way you speak to people in this environment is to talk to the people that they've elected and not just mention it to you and to me, but somehow we have to mention it to people that can mention it to the right people at the Highlands to say, this is okay, but we're kind of stretching the envelope here, because when we first saw the designs of the Highlands, it was here. And suddenly that design, for those people that didn't know what questions to ask when they were here back in those days, if I had asked those questions then, I would have known that at some point in time, there might be cars parked at the barn 20 feet from where I'm riding, running, or walking. But now that I'm here, it seems like this symbiotic relationship we've had, we've never asked for anything up there with regard to the plans, but it's getting pretty darn close now that if we're not going to ask for anything now, next step may be, mind if we open up those gates there, because those people that park there, they want to leave, and we already got Shillington to say we can open up the road by the quarry, so we can just go in and out like we used to 50 years ago. So that's just my 2 cents.
If I understand it, you have to get zoning relief for that 20-foot
For-
drive, right?
Right, and it's just, the 20 foot is just on the interior parking
Right.
area. So there is a buffer area between what would be the property line and then the parking itself. This parking is, both areas of surface parking are proposed to be screened with some landscaping, so that you're not seeing the headlights of the cars. Certainly if someone drives a big SUV, you can see the top of it, certainly.
And it's 3 and 4.
Yes, 3 spaces here, 4 spaces here, just 2 on the, yeah, and then 2 on the other side. And then our 1 ADA space up top. And the barn is it's an older barn, and the proposed architecture is to keep that theme and for it to be enhanced, so that, it's not brand new.
I would recommend a imitation argon forest. Imitation argon forest in front.
That's probably gonna come up with something.
Right, I think we're gonna consider
Additional landscaping.
No, this is.
Sure, I think.
And there's already part of
Shelley said there is.
Yes, it is.
County requirement.
It's for the width of the drive aisle, that's all.
Yeah.
Well,
So if they deny it, then they're gonna cut the tree down, and so.
And I do think the zoning hearing board's gonna be in favor of saving the tree and granting the variance.
But they could throw conditions about putting some additional landscaping.
Correct.
Sure.
And knowing the board, I would not be shocked at all if they do.
Which I think is reasonable, to save the tree.
Yeah.
What's the operation of the building on the plan, lower part of the plan of the house? That's
Yes,
just a
it
house,
It is a
single family
It is
home?
a home that is used for a couple, that's a retired couple that lives there, it's part of the home's property.
Do you have anything in regards to McCarthy's review letter you wanted to address specifically? I know there's a waiver request.
Yes, I do have a revised waiver request letter. In terms of the rest of the letter, I did talk through it with Craig, and, him and I talked through it. I don't think there was anything technical wise that we couldn't work through. So if you like, I'll run through the revised requested waiver letter.
And what's the timeline on this?
ASAP.
We hope to start construction in September.
Maybe less than an acre of disturbance?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
No NPDES permit, but EMS review by.
Well, I wanna say try and lump this in with the other project. The district.
They don't know that. They don't know this project, that project yet.
Huh?
So I don't think they know that project yet.
No, that
No,
project.
the project you're currently building, has an NPDS permit. Cause that was your delay on that one,
Yeah.
it got lumped in with the prior one.
Correct.
Possibly.
It's possible
It's
they pull this in and say,
It's,
So if-
I think it's small enough that maybe.
It is small enough.
hopefully
It's-
they would look at it, it's small enough and far enough and dislocated enough it doesn't.
Well, common
Sometimes,
sense, that doesn't usually apply.
Well.
See how that works out.
Mr. Price's point, it is under one, it's one
Yeah.
property. We're still on the same property that has the NPDES permit, so there's a possibility.
We're not sending them a letter on it.
If they do pull us into it, we will try to get it under, we'll see, we'll have to see. We could try to get it under 5,000 square feet if we eliminated some of the parking areas and use some of the existing parking areas and didn't clean it up as much, but that is plan D, E, F. We'd rather clean it up nicely like this.
Is it on the same parcel as the other? property?
Yeah, it's all one
It's all
project.
On one parcel, okay.
That was an issue we resolved 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay, alright, so that's another way to get around it, so.
So how many acres is the whole Highland property, 117 or 107?
113.
113. You wanna proceed?
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay.
Waivers. We have section 303, the preliminary plan, same one as last time, do a preliminary final combined. The requirements of the final, we're not subdividing anything, limited in scope. Project, one thing is
I'll make that motion.
We have a second.
So there's a zoning thing yet? And then there's the people that are talking and haven't found anybody to talk to yet that haven't discussed this, like the council hasn't discussed it. They ever want to approve it?
Yeah, this is the first I heard of it when I got the agenda for this meeting.
So the only thing that,
Granting the waiver to run preliminary final, we're not granting any kind of approval.
correct, you're just going through the waiver request at this point, but I mean, keep in mind the zoning hearing board being separate, but also what they're asking for, I don't see it being something the zoning hearing board's not inclined to grant, outside of that, there's nothing the borough can do to stop them from doing this.
Worst case with scenario with the zoning hearing boards, we have to cut
Cut
down
the
the
tree
tree or
down.
pave right up against it. Not ideal, we don't want to do that, so we'll seek the variance.
But outside of that, they're complying with all other ordinance requirements.
Well, John, since you have the auspicious distinction of being on both bodies, would you like us to push this forward so you guys can next Tuesday vote? Or would you guys like to have it running over here and we'll just wait until you guys offer some guidance as to this pretty significant thing going on?
We can all decide what we want to do. I'd say let's move it ahead.
Okay.
Oh, no, it's been expressed, sorry.
I don't think there's any showstoppers here.
That's right.
So,
Subject to.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
So the next waiver is 401.143.1, which is plan scale. Which we are proposing 1 to 120 for the overall site, so if it's on one plan, the overall one they saw, and then 1 to 20 instead of 1 to 50 because it's a smaller scale area that we're zooming in.
As I said earlier, we do that all the time.
As long as I don't draw it at 1 equals 14 scale or something weird.
Gotta be honest.
You have a computer account, don't you?
Yeah.
Or worse on the task scale.
Yes. 330 seconds, do that.
Yeah.
We do.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. For a second? Second. Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
I'm gonna lump these next two together. It's 404.1P and 404.1P. They're both boundary line monuments / street monuments. Again, it's 113 acres, there's a boundary all around, right away on Cambridge. We're focused on just the barn area, we're not proposing any revisions to any lot lines, any changes to any of that. So essentially, these two waivers are sort of going to set monuments in the corners of areas that, don't relate to the barn area. There's no monuments that need to be set for the barn.
Are you setting any pins in that area?
No, I don't believe, we're on a straight line, there's no jogs in it.
I just meant so you don't go in the setback, but that's up to you. You go in the setback. Then it goes to you.
I'm sure when they're in construction, they can set a few pins when the surveyors out there along that line.
So
Would you want them to do a spot survey when they're?
So we did get a survey done to design the site. It's just we're on a long line, it's a long property boundary. There's no corners next to the barn area. So by the definition of these two, we're not setting any monuments per se. If we want a setback line, I think the only thing though, it might be within the middle of Old Wyomissing Road, right? Isn't that where the boundary line is?
Yep.
So if we set, we could set,
You could set,
we could set pins wherever.
you could set 2 peak emails on both sides of the where you're working, and probably
So I don't think
your
we'd
waiver
object.
probably goes away.
So we don't object to
Would
that.
somebody like to tell us what the setback is from Old Wyomissing Road to the barn?
Like what the actual distance
Was it
is?
required, or how far it is now? Or how,
Close.
okay.
Um,
What's your front yard setback from the right of way?
Not too
50?
far off. It's dirt and grass right there now. So what's the
Should be
setback?
50.
50 is a building, 25 is parking access.
And the road there is what, a 33 right of way?
Well,
Huh?
I don't think it was right away with the old Wyomissing Road, because I don't think it's a road anymore.
If you give me one
No,
second, I
there
can
still should
actually
be.
tell you, hold on.
There's still a right of way through there, because it's a public road that we maintain. Because when Jim Babb and I drive the public works truck down there, everyone looks at us, why are we driving on the road they're walking on?
So could you take
So
your
I-
spotter there and show me where that setback line is going closer to the barn?
So this is the parking setback line right there, right on the edge of that parking, and then the building line is right there.
Seven and a half feet,
Old Mill,
old Wyomissing.
Old Wyomissing.
So that's what we have 14 feet total.
On each side.
So it's 15-foot wide right away. So 7.5 on your side.
Correct.
Okay. You guys at that end of the table, you all right with this?
I am.
I would just have 2 PK nails on the property line, one up by the driveway and one down past you, and call it a day.
So and that's fine if that's the approach we want to do. I think when we read it, it just says like all boundary lines on the perimeter of the property.
Right.
We have no issues doing
Does
the
that
2 PK.
eliminate the waiver?
Yeah, because your project's right there, so we just say that's it. So you got 2 nails there. Or if you want the waiver and they want to give it to you, you can, but
So we can add the 2 PK nails and save the 2 waivers. That's not an issue.
I just want clarification, it's not the whole thing.
Yes, yes, that's fine.
and you can label them to be set, you don't have to set them
Yeah.
today.
Okay,
They can be
Because they'll
set,
be
they can be
stake.
set when you're out there doing the stakeout.
yep. Okay, so that's four. The next one I have is 5023, which is on-street parking, where we put that, where we put that ADA space, that's technically off of Gale's lawn. We need that ADA space for accessible access to the front of that, building.
Are they in their private streets?
It's a
They
private
are
street
private
though,
streets.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Correct.
It says a private street.
Yeah.
So it should be,
I don't think there was a distinction within the ordinance for the on-street parking, whether it was private or not. There are some areas that have parking off of private.
I was gonna say,
drives.
there's currently areas in the Highlands that have on-street parking.
If that's the distinction.
I don't have the sound of it says.
He was on the,
Yeah, that's not what I was wondering. You can get it off the website. You know what section it is?
yeah, 502.3, right?
Yes.
It just says street, correct?
Yeah, just that one. It just said space to provide the
And then
accessibility.
if you go to definition,
So I think when we read it, I don't think it was distinct, but
502.3.
ordinances are very large and there's a different one for every municipality. So,
What is it? No on-street parking required
This is similar to what we granted for the Met, for those, yes, we did. You were not at that meeting. So this is somewhat similar to, what was approved for the parking spaces off the shared access drive between Wyomissing Square and the Met to allow those 10 parking spaces on the west side of that drive to be there. Yeah.
So, what do we need to do here?
I mean, if it doesn't have anything to do with Old Wyomissing Road, it's okay with me, because it's on the other side, it's only
Grant a
4
waiver.
miles between there and Cambridge Avenue.
You would need to grant the waiver to allow that one ADA parking space to be there.
There's there.
Yeah.
We want the ocean council on the third.
yeah, so
Oh,
it's
Somebody like to make that motion?
Look into two. See what's up with the
I'll make the motion.
Thanks, Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, motion carries.
All right, our last two are stormwater related. Our first one is 310 E12, which is a concrete emergency spillway. We have a fairly small basin with a fairly small drainage area to it. A little bit of concrete spillways, we'd like to do turf matting. Again, keep a little bit of aesthetics from Old Wyomissing Road so that you're seeing turf a concrete spillway. The drainage area is under 3 acres is 2 something. Flows are less than 10 CFS, and we have supporting documentation to support the liner rather than a concrete spillway.
So did I understand you to say you're spilling it the other way?
Well, we're still spilling it. It all has to flow downhill. Right? Water flows downhill. On the right hand side, the spillway and the outlet are towards Old Wyomissing Road, but they're diverted through a swale, which then goes to an inlet underneath. So it's all the spillway is on this side, and the outlet structure's here, and then it channels to an inlet that sits right about here. Actually, there's an existing basin right here that discharges to that same inlet, and then that goes under the road and discharges out here before the stream.
So I would just say this, from my experience, there's no water that is inhibiting people from using Old Wyomissing Road after it rains. Is that still gonna be the same, regard, I don't care where you take it to or where it ends up, is Old Wyomissing Road still gonna be traversable?
Yes.
As it is now?
Yes, we're not proposing any flow.
There's an existing pipe under right there. where you're
Yeah,
dying.
well,
It's down
down
grade
here.
of your.
Yeah, where that.
And that's all gonna flow in the roadside swell down to that.
Correct.
And how long is Old Wyomissing Road gonna be closed during all this?
We aren't proposing to touch it. The only spot we're touching is like right here where we make the connection. So we're not crossing any pipes over, there's no,
The PPL lines run underneath.
okay.
But don't drill on it, we don't go straight road.
Okay.
Jim, are you okay with the
Yeah.
spillway? Okay.
Yes.
Then I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries.
All right, and our last one is 305, which another previous gentleman spoke of. We are actually asking for a waiver of the whole section. And if you read the section, it's specifically called groundwater recharge. And within that section, it says it cannot be physically accomplished due to soil permeability, soil depth setback, geologic features, and the design professional shall be responsible to show this cannot be physically accomplished. What we did is with any project, we started and had geologists go out, do infiltration testing, check the soils, check them everywhere. We had 2 locations in particular, one where the basin is and one under the proposed parking lot wall area next to the barn. Both tested poorly, 0 infiltration rate, no percolation. So we can't physically get the groundwater into the ground. So what we've proposed is 18 inches of amended soil in the bottom of our facility.
18 inches of what, excuse me?
18 inches of amended soil. It's a topsoil mixed with sand and compost that helps nutrients and everything. And then we plant it with a grass area. And then we put an under drain underneath the 18 inches for a discharge. So the water sits in it, percolates through the amended soils, get your maximum evapotranspiration we can get, and we still discharge and meet the other requirements of the ordinance or meet the requirements of conservation district, all that stuff. Essentially, the waiver is to waive because we can't physically put the difference between the 2-year storm back into the ground. That is the request of the waiver. But we've done everything we can to try to mitigate that runoff.
I just have a question in there. Is the paved area that's adjacent to Old Wyomissing Road, will the pitch of that area change from the current pitch, which is basically level?
So not drastically, no. It is proposed like new pavement, like a mill and overlay type of situation, but it is not proposed. We do have grading contours shown, but it's not proposed to change it from 0 to 1.
Tilt toward Old Wyomissing Road?
No. And if you walk by, like and you kind of look up, this is kind of this parking lot will seem flat. Completely agree.
Right.
This will seem steep as you kind of look up. It seems a relative term. I think it's 10%
That's
or
always
something.
been that.
that's always been like that, and that is proposed to exist like that, and then we just tie in kind of flatten out the rock.
Okay, thanks.
Jim, are you okay with the waiver?
They can make that motion?
Yeah, I will.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries.
Would the planning commission at all be willing to entertain a recommendation for council to approve conditional final plan approval, subject to McCarthy Engineering's review letter dated June 8th, and subject to zoning hearing board approval and whatever additional conditions the zoning hearing board requests? I think that's it.
What's the subject?
Excuse me?
What's the subject? This?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
In some ways, that just puts a bow on it,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
They don't, I mean, it saves them from having to come back
Yeah,
here.
right.
so if you wanna save the tree, you're out of luck.
Somebody make that motion?
I'll make it.
Thank you. We have a second.
Well, actually, Ron, that's something, if you wanna save the tree, that may be something the planning commission
The
ought to
one
consider.
condition.
Letting the planning commission, letting the zoning hearing board know that you would like to see that saved. As a
And add that as a recommendation.
related or unrelated to your action.
But they don't have to pay attention
No.
to it.
Haven't they said that they want to do everything they can to keep the tree, that it would be,
Highlands
lack
has
of
said
approval?
The Highlands has
Has
said
said
that.
Yeah, right.
The zoning hearing board probably is not even aware of the application, are they?
I haven't even gotten an application yet.
So,
So you could include a recommendation to the zoning hearing board to show us the waiver.
Think they're gonna like that?
Grant the variance.
that's very common. A lot of other municipalities send all the zoning hearing board applications to the planning commission specifically
We've
to
done
get
it,
your input, get their input.
we've done it on one or two select projects. Council has actually done some type of letter of support or something similar.
Well, I think there's, I mean, it's not like we're trying to save a squirrel that runs in front of John's house in the last 10 years. This is a pretty significant location, a piece of property, and it's more than just the tree. It's all the other things that are going on that we just passed conditionally, which everyone's been calling Michelle, but no one's called John and the rest of the guys at the big table. So it seems to be an unknown subject that's percolating around here. We're the first ones to take action, say, we're good with everything, and council, we should be good with everything too, provided we do everything we still have to do.
Ron, to be clear, nobody's called me. I'm saying in reviewing these plans, I had the same comment about screening. Nobody's called me complaining about
Oh, I
this.
thought you said you had a lot of calls about this.
No, I've not had a single call about this. I said, in reviewing this plan when it came in and on a phone call that we had
Right.
together, meeting with the engineer and the Highlands, we had a pre-submission meeting. On that call,
Okay.
I made the same point
Oh, all right.
about there's hundreds of people that walk past here every day. I've not received a single phone
Oh,
call about
okay.
this.
So it sounds like there's two recommendations coming out of us with regard to saving that tree and supporting the zoning application, but also to increase the buffering, landscape buffering between the roadway and the parking lot.
As a recommendation to council or to the zoning hearing board?
Well, I
Like
would
both.
just say as a recommendation for preliminary final approval, complying with all the letters, but also to consider additional screening.
So Chris, would it be appropriate to amend the motion to include those two recommendations? So as stated before, but with the addition of the two recommendations, one, save the tree, and two, the additional screening.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. You know, Ron, it's just not like we're doing some project that's off in the hinterlands of the borough. Everybody on council's gonna know what that barn is and what we're talking about. So I think that, you know, they'll all be informed before the fact, it'll be on the agenda. And
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I'm just, I articulating that, we sort of tie council's hands a little bit by qualifying all these approvals pending all these things happening. So council is now sort of has to backpedal to move from the approval process to, well, we've already vetted this, which is our job.
Right.
And now it's your job to say, well, you were sort of out of line, you shouldn't have vetted anything until all those approvals were obtained to start with. And then we would have had a problem. We would have just said, approvals have been, and we can either approve it with those approvals, but now we've approved it based on getting approvals, and then council's gonna have to act based on the approvals having had occurred, or they'll say pending it, we'll vote again, whatever.
Yeah, but we do that frequently.
Economic development actually encourages that, so these projects can, economic development, so
Well,
these projects can move through as quickly as possible.
I think it makes more sense to move through with all the things you're voting on rather than vote preliminarily that everything's gonna happen the way it's supposed to happen. It's kind of bass backwards. We should actually be voting on things after they've been done, so we know what we just voted.
That holds up projects.
Well, of course it does, but that's the whole purpose of this group we're involved in here, to hold up projects, so nobody goes off half-cocked and says, well, that was great, we all did it was super. But, I mean, we get it done, but that's not the way it's supposed to be done. We're doing it in a way, we say in the beginning, we say pending approval, we're recommending this to council, so something has to happen before council gets it to approve it.
But in this instance, council's gonna know exactly what we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Let's keep it going here.
She'll hunt you down.
The next item on the agenda is a draft historic tourism overlay district. John, do you wanna give the explanation or do you want me to?
I'll do it. We've talked about it a couple months at economic development, and it's the Stoltz Foods Homestead. I don't even know if we talked about this before. 25.7% of Amish people in the United States, their last name is Stoltz Foods. And they have this, you know, homestead there, which a lot of people that came over from German Lutherans and turned into Amish people, they were funneled through that property, and a lot of people want to come see it. And they have an event every year, which I went to, which was very good. We kind of massaged the ordinance at economic development committee to make it specific to this property, because there's a couple other ones in the borough that it could apply to, one of which is the Hewitt House, which the borough owns, which that doesn't make any difference. There's a couple other ones, and I don't remember which ones they are. But, so this is an ordinance specifically for the Stoltz Foods Homestead to allow them to do tourism and have events there, and, you know, like weddings or social events for their, you know, Amish brethren as well. And, you know, it's important, and one thing that you need to keep in mind is they got this property donated to them by the Leader home, because George Leader, the ex-governor of Pennsylvania, his parents were Wayne people, and he's very sympathetic to them. Now, they want to try to get the Leader home to give them a little bit more land for some parking area, and but in the ordinance it says parking they can use. If they get a letter from the county, there's parking right across the street. They can have plenty of parking. You know, the caretakers live there, Elam and, what's her name?
Esther?
Esther, Stoltz Foods live there, and there's a somebody said, you know, we talk about Toons and Janssens all the time here in Wyomissing. Well, they were here over 100 years before the Toons and Janssens got here. And it's very important when you see the permitted uses there, weddings, corporate events, short-term residential, caretaker apartment, fundraising, festivals, private tours, history museum. I think it's just, it just adheres to their mission, and it's of the intent of the Economic Development Committee meeting to let them do these things, because it's an important part of Wyomissing history as well. So if there are any questions, I'm ready to answer them, if I can.
I'm glad you explained it, because when I read it, it was very specific, especially with the dates and everything.
Yeah.
So when I tried to put where it would go, but now it makes sense with the socials. It makes a lot of sense, I think so.
I think it does too, so.
So, John, you mentioned that overlay could apply to other properties as it's written.
No, it's the.
Well, hypothetically,
That's typically the question that comes up with an overlay.
it has to be before 1800.
Right, right
And
there.
it has to be adjacent to the county public park. So we know where the county public park is in the borough of Wyomissing. I'm not aware of another structure in that location that would qualify, but, so based on our knowledge of what the stock of structures is, we don't think another property would qualify based on these regulations.
We were intentionally pretty,
It
like,
was
trying to
originally-
narrow it down
Right.
and think of every possible.
But there's nowhere in the ordinances, it only applies to still suits property.
Right, oh, absolutely, I know, when talking about overlay zoning, that's the first question that comes up, is where else would it apply?
Yeah, we had initially, in the ordinance, be next to any park property.
Public park.
We took that out and made it county park.
We talked about the stone house 10 or 12 years ago and decided not to do anything about it.
Well, that was,
That's already happened though. The Schmuckers there, they get together once a year, don't they?
Yeah, but I mean, it's not a historic structure.
Yeah.
That's not related to this, but it's kind of related to this, but.
it is in that the Schmuckers and the Stoltzfuses,
Yeah,
there was a tie there, but not in terms of what we're proposing.
Oh, yeah, they're related, but their properties are now unrelated.
Yes.
One's part of our
Right.
historic structure, the other is not.
Yeah, the regulation as it presently reads would not apply to the stone house.
And that was, I think, one of our concerns too. They're Wyomissing parklands. If you just kept it in public park, that opened up a lot that could potentially be done.
yeah. So that's the thought process behind it.
Do we have definitions in the ordinance with regards to all of those uses that were listed, festivals, and the like? I think it was the previous page.
But you never know.
Right,
I don't think- I don't think they do either.
Right.
I don't mix it. Exactly. Yeah, I get you. But, they have what I would consider to be a festival there every year, the first Saturday of May. I don't know why they would have that on Kentucky Derby Day, but that's just me.
They're
So.
already wearing hats.
So we wrote it in regards to the particular property. Does that cover their intended uses? We got their input that this covers all of the things that they would like to do for it?
Yeah,
They've already been involved.
they've also, I've provided them with the draft of this just to make sure we didn't miss anything.
Just
They
making
were-
sure that there's nothing else that in the foreseeable future to go back and amend it and say, oh, hey, we forgot to ask for X, Y, Z, making sure we accommodate what they're actually doing.
I don't know what else they could ask for.
Well, if they've looked at it and said it was okay,
Yes.
take them. The guy who's there, Elon, is a fairly sophisticated guy, so I think he can read this and understand the meaning of it.
Again, my only concern is festivals, fundraising, special events, and then it goes on to say some parking on some off-street parking. It's kind of loose and it's,
Well, then the next paragraph is the key of off-street parking.
okay.
Well, and that was, I mean, Eric, my concern was I also wanted if they have any type of parking agreement with an adjacent property owner, I want it reported because of issues I've had with
Sure.
other properties where it wasn't and the agreement goes away, the borough never finds out about it or does only when there's an issue.
Right.
So.
Okay. We'll go forward, that was my concern.
I'd like to move it right along here, but there's no sense of urgency here. The committee wants to take a break for a month and think about it. I'm okay with that. If you want to move it now, I'm okay with that.
I mean, certainly, we could, add a definition of festival, a definition of fundraising, a special event.
Yes.
Could also add something for barn events, those are, I think the rest are all pretty self-explanatory.
I certainly don't have an issue with intent here, just want to make sure that we're covered.
No, not forest paving, this is the
That's
one,
not-
to
forest
amend the
paving is not this
definition
one?
of building coverage to exclude swimming pools.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought swimming pools was the issue. Do you have another issue you want to tackle?
Forest paving, are we gonna allow forest paving
Permeable paving to be excluded from the definition of paved coverage.
or
Up to 50%.
portion thereof?
Do we have any regulations in the ordinance with regard to maintenance of forest paving?
We
Yeah,
don't,
because
we
right
don't,
now
we don't allow, we don't recognize it.
Right, but I know that, you don't recognize it as an advantage to stormwater, but people do propose it, right?
But we make them design the stormwater for full, the ordinance is full and impervious now. What we were talking about was allowing them, to have,
Right.
one, to promote it, and then also was to, allow them, especially if they need to go over slightly, to allow them a credit for a certain portion of it. We originally talked about allowing them to go over and just not counting it, but then, as we started thinking about, if they were allowed 50% paving, they could pave the whole lot, which isn't our intention. Whether it be porous or not, I don't think anyone wants to see the residential areas of Wyomissing become concrete pavers from property line to property line.
Is that under this definition or is it a separate definition?
Paved coverage is a
Paved
separate.
coverage, okay.
Paved coverage is separate.
And is your recommendation that you get an exclusion of 50% of your porous paving area? Is that?
Yeah, they don't get, they get a 50% credit for it, but there would be a max. So they couldn't have 100% paving. If they're allowed 50, and they could go up to a max of 75.
And I don't have an issue with excluding forest paving from the calcs if there's a maintenance
Right, they have
plan in
the-
place, because that's the problem with that
Right.
paving.
Right,
It's
it's-
usually in the BMP, the maintenance and ownership requirements,
Right.
and that's usually recorded.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, in our case, we're only, that's what, improvements agreement, we've asked for 10 years, so,
Food inspections and stormwater agreement for 10 years.
but on the other side of that,
So we can table this till next month?
Yeah, why don't we tinker with it a little bit, add some definitions, add the porous paving or paved coverage.
Right.
they're not in any immediate rush for this.
Yeah,
so.
there's no sense of urgency, so, okay. Great. Well, great, thank you.
May I have horses? Chris?
What's that?
May I have horses?
Technically, no,
No.
not
well,
under our animal
Not
code.
under animal food.
Do you think we should encourage them to have horses?
Barn animal,
It would seem
You'll have one
consistent
chicken.
with the type of
no.
living that
Like in a barn.
we're intending to,
Yeah.
yeah.
You have a barn wedding,
You know,
because-
they'll have that hay.
Right.
Yeah, there is. For special events, they might include.
I'm pretty sure.
Okay, it's been a long meeting, but, thank you all in the first place. In the second place, does anybody else have anything? Okay, meeting's adjourned, thank you.
Chip. Hey, Chris, did you hear about this first? Residents Zoom thing, it's just like.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to look at it.
Well, I
heard
was
it the other day.
Michelle,
If you see something, send it to me.
Yeah, me too.
because
Yeah.
Michelle-
We're gonna be repealing that.